We recently moved into our new house. It's perfect, just the right size for our family, but it has a strange problem with the drains. I noticed it while I was unpacking the bathroom things. I turned to discover that my husband hadn't flushed and pushed the lever to send it down the drain. When it did, I discovered that the sinks burble whenever you flush the toilet. Nothing too jarring, but it scared me a little when I first heard it. The sink burbled and bubbled, making a noise deep in the drain as it cleared the water. My husband laughed it off when I mentioned it to him. "It's an old house, dear. The pipes are on the central line that feeds into the septic tank. No one has used them in a while, so it's probably just getting used to people being here again." I blew it off as a weird thing the house did and just went about my business. A week later, the drain started burbling when I took a shower, too. I overlooked it, though, not wanting to dwell on something I ultimately couldn't do anything about. This was the first place I'd lived with a septic tank. I'd always used city water, and I figured it was just something that happened when you used a septic tank. My husband barely seemed to notice it, so I assumed it was nothing out of the ordinary. After a few weeks, I'd almost come to ignore it, until the whispering started. I was brushing my teeth one night, running the water as I always did, when I heard the burbling coming from the drain again. I had bent my mouth to the stream to get a mouthful of water, when I could have sworn I heard a burbling kind of whisper coming from the drain. It was barely audible, more like a gurgle than a burble, but as I listened, it almost sounded like words. Black bank bees. Back bank bees. I turned off the water, spitting my mouth full of paste down the drain, and closed the door behind me. The burbling got worse from there on out. It didn't just bubble when the water was on. It always bubbled, loud and jarring, and I was still certain I could hear some kind of whispering. My husband just shrugged it off as normal. He was busy with work and didn't have time to indulge his flighty wife. I put up with it as best I could, but it was honestly starting to grate on my nerves a bit. I heard it in the kitchen, the living room, and especially whenever I had to go to the bathroom. The bathroom seemed to be the epicenter, and as the days progressed, I became more and more confident I could hear words amidst the gurgles. I lost my cool one night when my husband was working late. As I lay in bed, my son sleeping soundly next to me, I could hear the sink burbling and whispering from the hall bathroom. The bubbles were visible now when it burbled, deep green bubbles that sloshed up the drain and filled the sink with a stagnant water smell. Never when my husband was at home, of course, and the bastard didn't believe me when I showed him the thin film that hung on the bowl. As I lay there listening, the gurgling seemed to mock me. It seemed like only I could hear it, and the continued surge of tidal force had frazzled me. I was up before I knew what I was doing. I stomped down the hall in my pajamas, heading for the bathroom on bare feet. I was mad. I'd had enough of it, and I slammed the door open as I saw the towel rack shake ominously. I flipped on the lights like I was intending to catch the sink doing something wrong, and shouted loud enough to make my son stir and cry in his sleep. "Shut up! Shut up right now!" I screamed at the burbling sink. And, for a wonder, it did. The drain stopped burbling for a few seconds, and there was peace. Then a geyser erupted from the drain and splashed high enough to splatter the ceiling in a green fountain. It splattered the walls, pattered against the shower curtain, and caused the ceiling to rain drops of thick sludge. I'd fallen to my backside in the hallway, watching the geyser with wide eyes, when I saw something gloop out of the drain that made me scream. I scuttled across the floor, my back hitting the bedroom door, hearing my son cry out from the bedroom. I had seen the last thing I would have expected from the narrow bathroom drain, and I was certain now that I could hear something else joining it as it gurgled onto the bathroom floor. A hand of sludgy, green liquid that had pushed its way up the drain like an angry hurricane. I reached with numb fingers for the knob, the fingers refusing to find purchase as I slapped at it uneasily. I heard a gurgling thunk then, the sound of water trying to maintain a shape it was unaccustomed to, and something cast a shadow against the door. The best way I can describe it is the shadow appeared to be cast by a living jello mold. It was solid, but not transparent. It cast a watery shadow, its form undulating as it came towards the door. A single green watery hand gripped the door frame. I screamed as it lumbered into the hallway, and my grasping hand felt like a dead fish. It was 6 feet tall, bulbous and amorphous, with a shuddering bald head. Its eyes were murky green coals, and its form was a wiggling mass of barely contained fluid. The fluid was, well, it was awful. It had clearly drawn its matter from the septic tank, and the things floating within the water didn't bear thinking about. It took a single unsure step, the unstable golem shaking as it took another tottering step forward. My son was screaming now, unsure where I was, and his terror only amplified my fear. As it wobbled towards me, leaving puddles of oozing liquid on the floor, I heard the burbling voice again as it whisper wailed its words. Beck, bank, bees. Beck, bank, bees. I tried again to open the door, my eyes locked in terror on this watery monstrosity. Beck, bank, bees! Beck, bank, bees! I felt my own water puddle on the floor as my bladder let go, the creature towering over me. Beck, bank, bees! It yelled. It leaned over me, and I could feel the stagnant drops fall onto my face. I wanted to cover my nose. It smelled like raw sewage, but I was too afraid to move. I was sure in that moment that I would never see my husband or my son again. He would return home to find me dead, maybe find our son dead too in his bed. He would see the water and always wonder what had happened to me. As this creature crouched over me, I was certain that the last thing I saw would be his terrible sewage form. It bent its watery lips to my face then, and when it whispered this time, I could hear something different. Check. Tank. Please. The words were spoken as though they might break the creature, and they were spoken with the utmost emphasis. His speech was slushy, slurry, as though his tongue was missing. He was approximating speech, but it was still difficult to make out. I looked into those green orbs and repeated back what he had said. Check, tank, please? It nodded its liquid head, its featureless face almost looking relieved. Then it melted into a deluge of stagnant water, and I was covered in buckets of disgusting sewage. My husband didn't believe me. I was still cleaning up sewage when he came home, and he was utterly flabbergasted. I told him about the creature, about its final message, but he refused to believe it. It was a dream, he said. The septic tank had backflowed into the house, and I had dreamed this watery creature. We went back and forth for hours, until finally I had the solution. Open up the septic tank, then. If there's nothing there, then I'll never say another word about it. I'll deal with the gurgles and the bubbles, and I'll never say another word about anything. After another hour of arguing, he finally relented. We called a service, and they breached the lid. It wasn't too hard. The earth was removed, and the lid was removed with a little backhoe. The smell was atrocious, but the men didn't seem to mind. My husband told them that we had a problem with the tank. It flowed into the house, and they figured the valve had been stuck. I saw the pumper hose descend, and the tank was emptied. My husband said I didn't need to be there for this, but I wanted to see. As the sewage went down, I saw the operator's eyes grow large. He called his partner over, and a flashlight was found. The flashlight nearly fell into the tank when it fell across the sewage-covered lump. His partner told us that it appeared to be something in the tank, but we shouldn't worry. The house has been empty for a while. It's probably just a congealed mass or something. The operator continued to pump the tank, and as the water level fell, we saw that the lump was more than a congealed mass of waste. It was a body. The police were called. Our front yard was soon playing host to 3 squad cars, a fire truck, and an ambulance. The techs were shunted aside as the rescue team received the body from the septic tank and loaded the remains into a body bag for identification. The police asked us some questions, but had already cleared us for the most part, since the body appeared to have been there for months. The inspector had likely not breached the tank at all during the initial inspection, so the body could have been there for years if it had been sealed properly. As the bag was zipped, I got a momentary glance at him. It was large, the head bald and lumpy. It looked a little like the sewage form that had tottered over me in the hallway. Before they zipped it up, the desiccated creature's mouth lolled open, and I felt a chill run down my spine. His tongue was mangled. Since the incident, we've heard no more burbling. The septic tank hasn't sputtered, and the house has been quiet since that night. Other than the sounds of our family, of course. My husband still can't explain how I knew there was a body in the tank, but I'm just glad that there was ultimately a happy ending to the story. So next time you hear a burbling in your pipes, don't discount it as simple plumbing issues. Your house may be hearing burbles from beyond. Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. If you enjoyed tonight's story and you're not already, why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you don't miss any of the spooky stuff we do here. Maybe leave a comment too. I like when people interact with my videos. If you enjoy what we do here and you'd like to support the show, then the best way is to come on down to my Patreon. There's a link below. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and thank our patrons. Thanks to the Irish Devil and Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributors. Thanks to Emma Coltsfoot, Xaronana, and Leslie Lou Riddle for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you're considering becoming a patron, keep in mind, patrons get their spooky on a Tuesday and a Thursday. That's a day early. And you can also have your name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I do. And of course, patrons get access to all the fun stuff we do on Patreon, so what are you waiting for? Come on down and give it a look. If you'd prefer something a little more substantial, I also have books for sale. Follow the link below to my latest, Sleepless Nights. And if you meet me out in the wild, I have no problem signing it for you. I love to put my signature on just about anything. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.